everything that I do, no one actually formally taught me how to do it, but it was just something that had to come out and I didn't have the words. So I just started painting these obscure things and I just kept doing it throughout my life, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of secretly, like a
Yeah.
closeted artist. Um,
Yeah. Why was that? Why was it closeted?
I just, because I was insecure about not being taught. I was insecure about not
Mm,
going to school. I was insecure about not
mm,
having a pedigree.
yeah.
So I didn't feel comfortable showing those things because I feel like I'd be making excuses for why they weren't good,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? But I ended up just, you can actually take your own classes. Do you know YouTube is insane? You can actually
Right.
learn whatever you want now. So
Hmm.
I ended up doing like those kinds of classes and studying it in my own way.
Yeah.
And I surrounded myself with people who were like, hey, so what's up? You know what I mean? You're busy doing
Mm,
this, like let me see it. And
yeah.
that's actually how me and my partner Sammy Silbert started the company. She was like, girl, you do this, like why are you in the closet, like come on, come
Yeah.
outside.
Come out.
Yeah. So it just, I think it was closeted just because I was insecure about it being good, really.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
So then how did you find the courage to do it, to start that company, to be like, I'm gonna just do it.
Well, I mean, that's really all Sammy's doing, to be
Hmm.
honest with you. I mean, I'm really grateful for her because so during COVID, we all lost our jobs. And of course, me and her had like 6 jobs between us because that's what it takes to like live in New York City.
Hmm.
And so she told me, okay, come over. I can't do this anymore. We got to find something to do because we were both going crazy.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so she had like this whiteboard. I'm like, where she got this whiteboard? I don't really know. But she had a whiteboard and she had like a pen. And she was like, okay, what can we do together? Go. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I don't know. And I started saying things that had nothing to do with photography until she was like, I think we could do photography together. And I was like, I don't know. I've never been taught photography. Like, I don't
Hmm.
know if that's something that I could do. And it really takes like somebody believing in you to like come to into yourself, which is why I love
Hmm.
statement arts because I feel like you guys build that space for young artists to be like, you know what, I have somebody who has my back, so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go for it.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. That's that for me specifically too has been a game changer, just surrounding yourself with people who believe in you
Mm-hmm.
until you believe in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It gets a lot easier when you have people in your corner who believe in you.
Yeah, there's a little bit
Um,
of fake it till you make it, which sounds really cliche and kind of like weird, and you could put it as kind of a manipulation, but it's not. It's really just allowing yourself to inhabit the space that you haven't convinced yourself you are allowed to do yet, you know?
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with fake it till you make it, a
Yeah.
hundred percent. Um, so how did you start to find, we're gonna backtrack a little bit. How
Oh.
did you start to find your style as a photographer? Where did that come from? Or first,
Um,
actually, before you
okay.
say that, describe your style to me, your aesthetic.
So the style that I have, my own work that I do, I call
Mm,
it auto documentarian. It's a
mm,
phrase that I only discovered recently because I had no idea what type of artist I was. And it's
mm,
basically just documenting my life in different ways. So it's like I'll do a painting or I'll take photographs or I'll write something during an intense period of trauma.
mm,
And so throughout my life, I have these bursts of productivity and artistry that comes from intense forms of trauma that I don't know how to express.
mm-hmm,
And then it kind of got me into like faces and people's faces. And so I started photographing my friends or strangers or things or shadows. I became obsessed with light. And so it all kind of came from a place of, I don't really know how to say what I feel.
mm-hmm,
And so my style is a little bit more raw, a little bit more vulnerable, and it just kind of has to do with the reality of something,
mm-hmm,
whatever that is.
mm-hmm,
So there's a lot of black and white with my art. With Lomi, there's a lot of color because Sammy's kind of
mm,
the opposite of me. So she's like,
mm-hmm,
no, let's blast it with color, let's blast it with all this stuff. So we make a really good team in that way. But I
mm-hmm,
think my stuff kind of started with I feel something, I don't know what to say, so I'm gonna photograph myself. And then once
mm-hmm,
was able to understand the camera because I had no idea what to really do. And so I just took photos of myself as a little girl. And then I understood what lighting was and what the flash does, you know?
Yeah.
And then
Mm-hmm.
I started taking photos of people, and I was really drawn to faces because I feel like it's so telling. They don't have to say anything
Yeah.
for you to like tell something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's truth. It's humanity. So
Mm-hmm.
it's relatable right away because we're all humans and going through the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about that collaboration process with Sammy. What is that like, and like what challenges come up when you're working with someone?
Well, Sammy and I have known each other for 22 years.
Wow.
So we met in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and we were best friends in high school, and then we fell off a little bit. But we were always kind of tethered in this strange way.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about working with someone that you've known for so long is I can just look at her and
Yeah.
she's like, okay, you want a ladder? I'm like, yes, you know?
I love that. Yeah.
So it was almost like seamless in a way
Mm-hmm.
because we were able to kind of already know our facial structures and like our mannerisms and our body language enough to be like, I can anticipate what you need and you can anticipate what I need. And we were able to flow in a way that made kind of all this possible right now.
Mm-hmm. That's so
It's
beautiful.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful to find someone that you work well with and that understands your language that can make or break anything that you work on with someone. So I love that
Yeah.
for you. Um, so do you feel like you've traveled a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So you lived in Paris for a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How does that like, and you're originally from Puerto Rico, you were born there.
I was born in Puerto Rico. I came to New York when I was about 6 or 7.
Okay. So do you feel like the fact that you've lived in so many different places, does that impact your work in any way? Do you like consciously think it impacts your work, or tell me about that?
It does, 100%. It
Yeah.
does. Living in France was one of the greatest things that I ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to kind of come in contact with a different type of female presenting person.
Mm.
So in Puerto Rico, it's kind of not everybody, but for the majority of the culture, it's like women have a certain standard. There's a certain way
Mm-hmm.
that you're supposed to be. And I think every
Yeah.
culture has that, let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
And then in New York, it kind of changed. And then in France, it changed even more drastically because I saw women who didn't wear makeup or shave their armpits, and they were just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely gorgeous. You know, they just
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any of these restraints, as I would consider them. And
Mm-hmm.
so living there and talking to people who are very specific, because French people are extremely specific about
Yeah.
things. They're not
Mm-hmm.
broad, like, you know, I want to be like, oh
Mm.
my God, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. And then French people like, I don't know if it's the most amazing, but you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, and they don't mean to be
Yeah.
mean. They just are so specific about
Mm-hmm.
things and their words, and they choose their words really carefully. And I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciated that. And I was surrounded by a lot of artists. So, and I visited so many different countries and cultures. Even like
Mm-hmm.
with Sammy, me and her traveled for a lot of our lives together before we
Mm-hmm.
even did Lomi.
Yeah.
And it was just a need to know what was going on in the world,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that what I know isn't what is normal, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that it influenced me. I definitely think that living in France was an amazing experience, and it really showed me what is possible within
Yeah.
myself and with the things around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would strongly recommend to anybody in this planet to visit another part of the world that you don't know the language, you don't, I mean, within safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
To really discover different things, because you will get to know yourself better, which is literally, I think, what any artist is doing. I think
Mm-hmm.
they just do to find out who they are.
Yeah. How did you manage to get yourself to travel to all of those places? Like, what did you have to do in terms of finances, in terms of planning? Like, how does one go about doing that?
Well, so there's many ways that you can go about it. The best way that I went about it was to plan like years in advance. You know what I mean? Because then things
Mm-hmm.
are cheaper, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can kind of get a sense for how things work. You're not rushing into it. I think it's really fun to have a spontaneous trip, but like I know that I could never really afford that.
Right.
So it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, all right, I know I want to go to this place, so I'm going to take a year to find out exactly how I can get there.
Mm-hmm.
And just preparing yourself and having that time, I think, was really what allowed me to travel and
Yeah.
to have a partner. I mean, I love traveling alone. Traveling with Sammy was really interesting for me too because we are so different. And she wants
Mm.
to see things that I don't give a shit about. And
Yeah.
she wants to see things that she doesn't care about. And because we
Mm-hmm.
have that duality, it helped us to kind of see more things than we thought we would ever see. So
Yeah.
having a good partner to travel with, planning in
Mm-hmm.
advance, knowing exactly where you want to go and what you want to see is
Yeah.
really important.
Thank you for that. Um, so a lot of people actually wanted to know where you find your inspiration. Where do you get that? Where do you get your inspiration from?
So that's a good question. Um, I really believe that anything that you think is negative about you is
Mm-hmm.
actually the best thing about you.
Mm.
I don't really know how to explain it, and I know many people have said it in many different ways, but I used to really hate myself, and there was something about that hatred that I held on to, that I identified with, that um, took me a while to realize that it was my strength, you
Mm.
know? So my like empathy or my observation of people and surroundings, I always thought was the worst thing about me. Like, damn, I always focus on this thing, like I'm always, I just like, until you stop and you realize, no, it's actually like the best thing about me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take that and put it into a place that feels really good, and you can push it into a space that allows you to be expressive instead of downtrodden on yourself. So
Yeah.
I think you can take beauty from the things you think are the worst thing about you.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're able to really analyze why you think that way, you
Right.
can see that they're actually the best things about who you are and
Yeah.
what you can give.
Mm-hmm. I think I agree with you. I think when you do that, like you said, figure out where do those thoughts even come from, that those
Mm-hmm.
things are bad. You start to realize, are those thoughts even mine? Did I
Mm-hmm.
actually come up with those, or is that what people in my life have been telling me, or society has been
Yeah.
telling me is
Yes.
bad? Like, I grew up being a very sensitive person, and now
Mm-hmm.
I'm an actor, so that
Mm-hmm.
it is the best thing about me. It is what,
Mm-hmm.
fuels my art. And yeah, I think that's really beautiful. I think someone said this to me once. They said radical self-acceptance, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like you truly accept your whole
Mm-hmm.
self, even the things that you hate, all of it, and you cherish it and you honor it. Of course, we
Mm-hmm.
want to get better, but
And that's
to
part of the process, is getting better.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a part of the lifelong
Mm-hmm.
process, and
Mm-hmm.
that'll always be there.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Are there any artists that you feel like have inspired your work?
Yeah, I have a list of
Oh, I love it.
artists because I used to like things blindly. And then
Mm,
I got a little older and I was like, but why do I like this?
yeah.
Why? So I remember seeing like Robert Mapplethorpe. I really enjoyed his work because it was just, people classified it as pornographic, but I'd never understood it that way. I found it
Mm-hmm.
to be very beautiful, and like Graciela Iturbide, she's an amazing artist. She does amazing self portraits and she takes photos of like her surroundings. And
Mm.
Francesca Woodman is a really big one for me because she did a lot of like slow shutter things. So there's a lot of
Okay.
movement in her
Yeah.
work, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of black and white, a lot of ghostly things,
Mm-hmm.
and I really loved her work. And there's a slew of people that I've saw that I've just been like, wow, this is amazing. And then it wasn't until I got older that I was like, okay, but why do I like this? Like
Right.
why do I like, Daido Moriyama, who's this Japanese photographer who doesn't care anything about technique or anything about um, equipment. He doesn't know what camera he uses, you know what I mean? But he just has an eye for things, and it's blurry and it's like not centered or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
there's something so beautiful about his work that really drew me to it because it's like it comes from the gut, you know? And I'm like a
Mm-hmm.
gut person. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're thinking too much, you're feeling too
Mm-hmm.
much. What's the gut
Mm-hmm.
like drawing
Mm-hmm.
you toward? And
Mm-hmm.
those artists definitely influenced me.
That's beautiful. You speaking of gut and saying you're thinking too much, that reminds me, I imagine that that's probably a conversation that you have to have with the people that you're shooting, right? Like your subjects, trying to get them out of their head. How do
Mm-hmm.
you do that? How do you go about doing that?
It's one of my favorite things about photographing.
Mm-hmm.
I love it so much because it's such a weird way of saying it, but it's like I can enter someone, you know,
Yeah.
and it takes a while to get the feeling of what somebody is like and how they accept information. But when I'm able to connect with them, it's really beautiful. So I do a lot of exercises, whether it's moving your body or
Mm-hmm.
doing mouth movements or everybody screaming on set at the same time
Mm-hmm.
or just doing anything like jump up and down or I'm going to turn around, just whatever it takes until I find that little thing that makes that person relax. And it's actually more important to me than the actual photo because I'm able to like get to a place where they feel seen. And that is just so important to me for people to feel like this person saw me, this person heard me fully for who I am and what I do. And the photo ends up being awesome, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they say things like, I didn't know I could look like that, you know,
Yeah.
because they just, they're able to open up in a way. And the good thing about my partnership with Sammy is that I have a way of talking to people and she has a completely separate way of talking to people. So
Mm-hmm.
we find whoever is like best equipped for that person
Mm-hmm.
and it's really really beautiful. I really love that's really why I love to photograph people because I can kind of connect with them in a way where they feel like they've been seen and I really like that.
Yeah, that idea of being seen translates to all mediums, I think. Like
Mm-hmm.
you talking about how you're connecting with someone, through the lens or on this other side of the camera reminds me of the way that actors engage and see each other for who they are. It's like you're tapping into someone's deepest humanity,
Mm-hmm.
which is like that's what art is. Like that's what we're doing. So the fact that you can do that before the picture's even taken is really beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can identify the truth versus what's made up. I'm
Yeah,
sure that you can be on stage with someone or on set with someone and identify, okay, this person is that we're actually connecting
right.
versus I don't know what you're doing, bro. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You definitely know when the truth is not being told, and
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to see that on camera,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Um, okay, so when you're making art, how do you keep your judgmental thoughts at bay?
Man, I don't.
Mm,
I let them dance. I'm like, here, you want a margarita? How can I make you more comfortable here? What else do you want
mhm,
to tell me?
mhm,
I don't fight them. I used to fight them like my skin crawled off my face, you know. I used to fight all these words and these thoughts in my mind that were so negative and were so poisonous. And then I just kind of like accepted them,
mhm.
which is super hard. And I can't even tell you how I got there. I'm still kind of like figuring it out. I think we
Yeah.
will always be just figuring it out.
Mhm.
But I don't. I'm like, do you want a hat? Are you cold? Do you want like okay? And then they say what they have to say, and I'm like,
Yeah,
cool. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Thank you. And you can go back there now
Mhm,
because it's like for me at least, if I don't allow it to come out in my like if I don't allow them to speak, it'll build up and it'll manifest itself somewhere else.
mm.
So I just say thank you for your input, and I will be continuing now. And that has helped me.
Right, like I will proceed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which is major, which I think is the biggest thing. It's like, and Lisa says this all the time to the students, like, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, acknowledge it, honor it, whatever you have to do, but just continue, like you said. And I think the
Mhm.
more that you do that, the more you realize, oh, I can just continue. Like it doesn't have to cripple me, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
That's
really
beautiful.
happy that she says that to her students because I really
Mm-hmm.
wish someone had said that to me. And I think that's why I love your organization so much because I feel like you're giving them information that they're not going to learn really in a structured way. And I'm really happy that she says that to her to you and the students and your students
Mm-hmm.
because it's really important to just understand. No, I'm not my worst enemy. I just have a voice that is mean, and that has
Mm-hmm.
its place.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it helps, actually. And that's part of the loving yourself no matter what you think about yourself
Mm-hmm.
philosophy. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, no, I'm just going to do it anyway. And you feel so good afterward. I'm sure your students feel amazing after they're like shitting their pants. And like, but they do it anyway. And they come out on the other end just like, okay, that wasn't so bad actually. You
Right.
know?
Yeah. And yeah, we talked about this on the last live too. Like once you get past that, like you realize what you're capable of. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh snap, I could do more. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is, it's a whole new, you're like on a whole new level. There are so many other possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful moment.
Yeah. And you get to see the restraint that you've been putting on yourself, that you've just been implementing on
Right.
yourself from things that it's like learned behavior or things that you've heard that you just internalized growing up. That happens a lot when you're a teenager, I think. You just
Mm-hmm.
internalize all the things that you hear and you just adapt them as your own thinking until you realize that I don't actually feel this way. And that's the part of getting to know yourself that I'm really like an advocate for.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so how did you go about building a portfolio for yourself? What was that process like in the
That is like
beginning?
surprisingly the hardest question ever
Okay.
because like it's hard to judge your work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think building a portfolio is composed of two things. Does it speak true to you, and is it coherent with the rest of your work? So if you have a body of work and you're trying to see how you can curate it, I think the best thing to do would be to look at it as a whole and then pick out the things that really speak to you and that have some sort of similarity so that you can develop a style. And a style, I learned recently, is important to any artist so that you have a kind of path to what it is that you want actually. So finding a style within your work, putting it all together, making a story in that way, I think is the best way to build a portfolio, which is so hard because like when I was building my portfolio, I was like, well, everything is shit. And then, like, I showed it to people that I trusted, and they were like, no, this isn't shit. Like, this looks good. This looks similar to that. And just like asking people's opinion, which is also something that's extremely hard because you don't want them to say something negative about your work. Erica Badu said, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. And I totally relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get the opinion of people you love and you trust, and you find the style and the story and what you connect with in your work, then you're able to make a portfolio that you are proud of. Because that is the most important thing at the end of the day. Like somebody else could be like, no, your favorite thing isn't what's gonna work. You should do this because it's whatever. It's like if you feel proud of the work, I think it's gonna take you further for sure.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad you got into that because I was going to ask you about how you manage showing your work to other people and getting feedback. Um, has there ever been a time where you got feedback that was like, ooh, that hurt, but then you took it anyway?
Yeah, yeah. I got feedback which when you think about it, it just kind of pertains to you as a whole. I got feedback once that's like, well, it looks like you're hiding a little bit.
Ooh, wow.
And I was like, oh, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You know what I mean? But then I thought about it and I was like, man, I really am actually. That's totally what I do is I'm hiding. So,
How did that manifest like through a photo that you weren't in the photo, I imagine, right?
I'm not in the photo. It's just it pertained more sort of painting. So the paintings that I
Okay.
make are just of me because I only had me as a subject. So I just
Yeah.
know how to paint me. I don't know how to paint anything else.
Yeah.
And a lot of the paintings were my face was kind of obscured in some way, and I just thought it as like decorations or whatever, but it was actually just a form of me hiding. And in
Mm.
my photography, I did a lot of you could tell that there's a separation that I need to have. There's like a boundary that I don't want to cross, whether the photo is completely blurred, whether the photo is at an angle that you can't distinguish what I'm looking at, which is a style that you could totally adapt.
Mm.
But in my case, it was definitely a form of me just hiding.
Mm.
So I'm very appreciative for that feedback, even though at the moment I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. But when
Mm.
something like sticks in the head and it just stays there, you got to investigate that. Whatever, however, whatever the result is, I think you have to investigate why something is like stuck. You know?
Yeah, because there's probably a little bit of truth there
Yeah.
that you're not trying to confront. It's hard though. It's really hard, especially when it comes to art. You can be
Yeah.
very sensitive about it. But I agree when it's something that you keep on thinking about, you might have to humble yourself a little bit. And if
Yeah.
if you're on the path of I want to be great and I want to be my best and I want to
Mhm.
live up to my potential,
Mhm.
let's take some feedback.
Yeah.
I went through some time where I was like, I don't want feedback from nobody. I just don't want it. I'm too sensitive. But
What was the thing that you kept hearing? Was there something you kept hearing?
um yeah, that I was holding back.
Mhm. Mhm.
And which now I definitely know, like, yes, that's my thing. And
Mhm.
once you listen to that and you take that and you don't take it so personal,
Mhm.
now I'm like, I know that that's what I go to, right? Like that's what I
Mhm.
revert to sometimes. So I have to watch for that. And
Mhm.
if I'm watching for that, then I'm already doing better. Like
Mhm.
it gets better. There's a question here
Mhm.
from what does your day-to-day look like with Lomi? It's a good question.
Well, no day is the same as the other. No month is the same as the other, which is another reason
Mhm.
why I love this job.
Mhm.
Job.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of retouching because I do a lot of post production. Sammy does a lot of pre-production.
Mhm.
Um, but it's like we did a fashion show. We were in a fashion show, and then we, you know, did some portraits, and then we went to another place and photographed some politicians, and then we, you know what I mean? Like, it really just varies. We're prepping for a shoot right now with a really close friend and a client of ours, and we went to like Central Park and picked up pond scum because like we needed it for the shoot. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
so every day is very different, and I think if that's the type of life you want, it's definitely worth being an artist and investigating if that works for you. Because I
Mhm.
love that my day does not look the same every day. I think I would go crazy if I'm like, all right, punching in, punching out.
Right.
My day's the same. I pray for my vacation. I mean, I still pray for my vacation, but
Mhm.
it's fun to like have so many different days. Days look so different. The hours are so different. And that's
Yeah.
really what I like.
Another question here is, have you had to make sacrifices for the sake of creating your art?
Yeah, so yeah, I was in a relationship with someone, and they wanted me to move to their state and to
Mm.
get married and have a kid and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm not saying no to that, but I'm really focused on this, and I would love your support,
Mhm.
and I would love for you to be here for that. But if you're not, then this isn't going to work out for me. And that
Mm.
was really, really difficult
Mhm.
because you want to be loved and you want to have someone to come home to, but
Yeah.
that person wasn't really supporting me. They were just supporting me as so far as they could get what they needed,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think that was a really tough thing to do, was just to be like, and it just pertains to a whole group of people. Okay, I'm going to do this, and if you don't support me, then there's a problem with you, and I need to move on.
Mhm.
And that's hard to do when you've attached yourself to someone or when that person's opinion is so important. It just
Yeah.
becomes really tough to let people go. But I think, like, of all the interviews I've ever listened to of people that I admired, this is something that they say a lot. You have to let go of people you didn't think you would have to
Mm.
in order to like get to the place that you need to be. And like I haven't like I don't know the right words yet, but I know that that's like a common thing with people who do something out of the box is you're surprised with the people who support you and you're surprised with the people who don't support you.
Mm.
And you just have to find the thing that works best for you, which
Yeah.
includes sometimes leaving people behind.
Right. Yeah.
It must have felt like that for you at some point when you're thrust into like the theater or like a show or whatever, a movie, and you have to spend so much time in a script or in school or
Mm-hmm.
studying. You have to I'm sure you devote yourself to a level where if someone is insecure with themselves, they're just gonna be jealous of what you're doing, which is like
Right.
so toxic.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that um if you're following your joy and the people around you can't support you following your joy, that's a problem
Yeah,
because we should all be following our joy. Like that's
yeah.
the highest way of living. Yeah, and who you have around you is really important. Um how do you discern, going back a little bit to getting feedback from people, how
Mhm.
do you discern specifically who you should listen to versus whose opinion you should just throw away?
So, like a couple years ago when we first started Lomi, we showed our portfolio to anybody who would look
Mm,
at it.
mm-hmm,
And we had meetings with people who were prominent, and when we spoke to them, we just felt like all our energy was just pulled out of our soul. Like we had this one person that we had a meeting with who has a whole like photography expo that he does every year and was very prominent in photography, and we sat with him and he's like, this is good, but like you can't do this. And we were with him for an hour. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, an hour, where he's just telling us what we can't do.
mm,
And at the end of it, we were exhausted. We were just exhausted. And I think your body communicates to you. And the thing about being an artist, I think, is when something gives you so much energy, you're on to something, you know? Like, man, I feel good. This feels like something. Even if you're angry, like it's still this energy. But when you feel like I gotta go to sleep, I can't. This drained me, you know. I think there's something about that you have to be careful of when you talk to someone and you're just like, I feel terrible. I don't think you should ever feel terrible. I think you should feel like, okay, this is the information that I got, and I'm gonna pay attention to it. I'm gonna digest this versus I just need to take a nap because I can't even believe how much energy this person just took from me. And there's gonna be a lot of people I feel, and it happened to us, that we would have meetings with, and they were just kind of talking at us
mm,
for them. It wasn't even something that it just felt like. I mean, it was really insane to have these meetings with people where they were like, yeah, I'm a supporter, and then it's actually just them telling you everything you can't do, all the things they've managed to do, and at the end you're just exhausted. And like, so I think like my body was really a component of how I could analyze how a meeting went. Like, do I
mm-hmm.
feel like I have energy from this? Even if I'm angry, it's still energy. Or am I so tired that I just want to sleep because I want to forget about it? That's like for me an indicator of somebody that's taking my energy, and it's not helpful, and I shouldn't really take everything they say so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super, super real. Something specifically you said a couple of times, someone who's telling you what you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really, really major. I totally agree. I think that when you're having conversations about how you can get better, you should feel some sort of sense of empowerment. That doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
you're going to feel really good, but
Mm-hmm.
it should feel like there's something is opening,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
someone being like, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like limitations
Mm-hmm.
is not what you want to hear. That's really big. I'm glad you said that. I never thought of it that way, but it's true. It's definitely true.
Yeah, because some people be out here throwing their negativity on you for free. You're like,
Yeah.
damn, I didn't even pay for this.
I
You know?
didn't even get paid for this. That's so true. Okay, so one of my last things is, what would you want young artists to know?
um, I talked to you about this the first time that we met, and this is still very prevalent to me, which is loving yourself regardless of your opinion of yourself. And I think that's really, really important. And it's unfortunate that no one can be like, this is how you get here. You know what I mean? It's just like everyone's journey is super different. As cliche as that sounds, I wish I could be like A, B, and C, and D, and you're good. You know, but everyone's journey is different. And I know that I had to go through like the most thunder, rain, hate, darkness. I had to like go through it because I was avoiding it my whole life, just go through it. And at the end of it, realize, you know what? I only have myself. And you have people around you forever, yeah, that's true. But I only have myself, really, if you think about it. And if I'm going to do this, then I need to have a support within myself. How am I going to have a support within myself? Well, I'm just always going to have my back. How am I going to have my back? Well, I'm going to have compassion for myself that maybe nobody else had for me. And allowing yourself to have that compassion for yourself and that empathy for yourself, and just being like, you know what? I messed up, but I'm going to learn from this so that I can move forward. I'm not going to let this bring me down, you know? There's a terrible song by Beyonce. I love Beyonce, but there's a terrible song by Beyonce called Me, Myself, and I. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, and I love this freaking song. I karaoke the hell out of it. But it says something like, I'll never let myself down.
Mm.
And it's like I super relate to that, because at this point in my life, I know that no matter what happens, no matter how embarrassed I am or how much I messed up, I'm never gonna really let myself down, because I love myself unconditionally. And I really
Yeah.
want people to get there. I wish someone said this to me when I was little. I mean, maybe it's for the best that no one did, because I found it other ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wish people would have said that to me, like, you know what? You just got you. So how are you going to make the relationship with you the best that it can be, so you can do anything you want? That's really like the most important thing I want people and young people and your students to really take away.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so, so beautiful. Because when you're alone with your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
you only have you in that moment, and you gotta make sure that that foundation is really strong. I wish someone said that to me too when I
Right.
was younger.
Right.
Totally. Um, okay, so do you have any resources that you recommend for beginner photographers, beginner painters that you want to share? That could be a podcast, a website, a store, whatever you think that comes to mind.
I will definitely have, because I didn't think about this before, I'll definitely
Sure,
have a
sure.
better answer for you
Mm-hmm.
after this for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think something that just helped me was to go to every single museum ever.
Mm,
And, you know, there's like free Wednesdays or whatever, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
there's a way that you can go see a museum. And even if you hate what you see, just be like, why do I hate this? Why do I hate this? And so like I wish I had like better resources like this podcast or this thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, you can totally
you know,
let me know after, and I'll post
yeah, I'll
it. But
have a
that's
list of authors because I read a
mm-hmm.
lot. And
Yeah,
when you
that's
read
good.
something like, even like Bell Hooks, there's a book she wrote
Mm,
called All About Love.
mm-hmm.
And she references so many other people in it that you just have
Mm,
a whole bookcase of books
mm,
from that moment.
mm-hmm.
Like I remember, or even Susan Sontag, she has these books called like I Etc. and like photography and ethics and stuff. And she references so many people
Mm,
that like you just go to the next book and go to the next book and go to the next book. It's just about like taking notes about what you're doing and what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I can get you like a list of books and stuff because
Yeah.
that's the way that I learn. It's just, oh, okay, she mentioned this person. I don't know this person. Who is this person?
Right.
And then
Mm-hmm.
go from one thing to the next thing. You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. I honestly, I'm looking forward to getting the list, but I love what you said about just going to a museum and asking, why don't I like this? Why do I
Mm-hmm.
like this? Staying really, really, really curious and
Mm-hmm.
asking all the questions. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. If
That's
you see a
perfect.
play or if you see
Right.
anything, if you see a movie, if you see a movie and you're just like, yo, I hated this. And you got, if you ask yourself, why did I hate this? Sometimes you'll find out that you're just projecting onto the film.
Mm.
And then you get to know yourself better, like, oh, yeah, this is my issue. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know?
That's so real. Yes, I agree 100%. I love that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom and your journey. I appreciate it so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank
For
you for having me. It's such a joy to talk to you, honestly, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. I thank you for being vulnerable and authentic and
Mhm.
willing to share your time. It means a lot, and hopefully we'll see you soon. And I pinned
Yes.
Lola's Lomi Company website,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
y'all can go ahead and take a look at that and take a look at her and Sammy's work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
y'all,
we're
thank you
very
so much.
open to having these conversations. So if any of your students want to talk further, we're super open to that.
There you go. You can
Mm-hmm.
DM Lola, DM
Mm-hmm.
the company's Instagram, get
Mm-hmm.
everything you need. Thank you so much again, Lola. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys
My
for
pleasure.
joining, and we'll see you soon. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.